We were talking about the fight against climate change before we went to the break. A lot of events going on in Bonn. And to talk more about that, we're joined now by Ranping Song. He's a senior associate at World Resources Institute. That's a global research organization on the environment, economic opportunity, and human well-being. Still hoping to track down that story about these young people from China, but really, they really are kind of taking the lead in many respects. Young people fighting all around the world for action on climate change. Talk to me a little bit about, and I know we talked when you were in Paris, talk to me about your level of disappointment that the United States has backed out.
Well, of course, China and the US was two, leadership peers that make Paris happen. So that was, under President Obama and then President Xi, that they worked together to advocate a very ambitious outcome that managed to convince and joined by many leaders of the countries. Therefore, therefore this Paris Agreement, right? A very exciting moment, and it's of course very disappointing to see one major peer of the world that decided to leave out the world. But actually, as we come to the negotiation, and we realize actually many countries, they're realizing that people across the globe now, they're experiencing the climate change event that was long predicted, by global warming. We see mega storms in Texas, in Florida, in Puerto Rico. We see hurricanes in the Caribbean. We see massive flooding in Africa and South Asia. Therefore, countries, national governments, cities and states and companies are coming together and to stand behind the climate actions. Therefore, even though the U.S., the federal government is sitting back, but the rest of the world is carrying on and implementing the Paris Agreement. It's
a wake-up call in many respects. I think you'd agree. What does it mean to have somebody like the leader of Fiji get up there and talk about what's happened to his country and how people have actually had to leave the island nation because of what's happening with climate change?
Of course, Fiji is one of the small developing countries that were actually disproportionately be affected by climate change. Historically, Fiji contributed very little about global warming or greenhouse gases, so they are the victim. They did not cause this. And you can see that from their vantage point how unfair this it is. But at the same time, you can see that how Fiji utilized this opportunity to be as the presidency of this COP23 to rally around the world to gain the support, to really see that need to compensate the loss and damage caused by climate change, to ramp up the effort to adaptation, to really trying to step up the effort to provide more funding and more support to mitigate climate change, and trying to lay out the foundation that was needed to really meet the long-term goal that was set out in Paris Agreement.
We talked about Donald Trump, the United States, backing out. What does that mean for China? I mean, as you pointed out, Xi and Obama going in, they really led the leader in this regard?
It definitely gives more opportunity for China to take a leadership role. But at any point that, China taking a leadership role is good for itself. So first and foremost, it's good for its economy, good for its environment, and it's doing for its own interests. As we can see that after Trump made the announcements to withdraw from the climate agreement, China actually stepped up its efforts. In this year, China's solar installation goal actually bypassed that the target was set last year by 2020. So that's actually 3 years in advance to get the solar power installation goal. And what the government in response? It responds to set a more ambitious goal. So for now, the projection is that by 2020, China is going to have more than 200 gigawatts of solar installation. By then, that's 5 times more than the U.S. current installation. So you can see China is actually stepping up its own effort. China is drafting a plan to phase out internal combustion cars. So we want to take a lead on electric cars. China is using the opportunity to facilitate and foster more South-South cooperation, facilitate more cooperation and exchange and mutual support with developing countries. All of this is a show that how China plan to take advantage of these opportunities and by advancing its own domestic agenda, as well as increase its international reputation and leadership.
Yeah, and you heard a lot about this during the 19th Party Congress. It came up quite a bit. Let me ask you about what you expect to come out of Bonn. What are some of the things that people will be talking about there?
Of course, because this is the first island countries as a presidency COP, so there are a lot of focus will be on adaptation, loss and damage, and what kind of support that a smaller country will receive. But most importantly, this is more like a foundation COP. So what it means is like there's not a lot of hard policy deadline that has to be come out of this COP. But nevertheless, it will be very important COP to lay the foundation for countries to agree on how to, for example, how to measure their agreement, how to measure their progress, how to construct and develop next contributions, how to increase the ambition by 2020. So this COP will have very important role in setting up the expectation. We are not may not expect a lot of hardcore agreement in this COP, but we will see a lot of people, countries coming together a little bit and lay the foundation to make a really solid agreement next year and all the way to 2020.
All right, Ranping Song, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming in. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.